where there hasn't been a day I haven't been connected to a greater purpose, which is very rare, but it's also something that anyone can do. We are inherently blind to who we are. We run on autopilot, an internal narrative. And the great thing about a wingman is they see your blind spots and they help you navigate some of those shortcomings. So it's a really neat, simple 4-step process to take ambition into reality, into reflection, into action.
Hello, welcome back to another episode of Code 3 Life Reinvented. I'm your host, AJ, and I'm really looking forward to today's conversation. My guest is based in the U.S., although I think you'll find as he starts talking, he's not originally from here. Nonetheless, we're happy to have him as a guest on the show. He has a vast experience flying military aircraft and now runs an organization that really focuses on leadership and leadership development. But I think there's some really interesting things that we can explore from his work along those lines into how it can help you with your own personal life reinvention, and what are some ideas and concepts that we can take out of his work and today's conversation that you can apply today. So I'd like to jump right into it and welcome you to the show, Christian Boucousis.
Thanks for having me. I'm really looking forward to the podcast. You're doing wonderful work.
Just jump right into things. Tell us, have you had a Code 3 moment in your life?
Well, yeah, I've had plenty. I've had a few, actually. In aviation, you fly a very expensive, complex machine that breaks on you sometimes. But probably the moments in aviation that stuck with me the most in terms of valuing life are 4 near misses in aviation. And near miss is basically, but for the grace of God, it would have been a collision. And during my career as a fighter pilot, I also served in the United Kingdom. So I've gone from Australia, big country, not many airplanes, hard to hit each other, to a country that's tiny with 4 times as many airplanes, airliners, and everything else, where I had 3 near misses in the UK, and I had 1 in Australia where my wingman missed me by a foot. So those moments were pretty powerful. I had a Code 3 moment with my son, who basically had a fit and stopped breathing and turned blue and helped me understand the value of family. But also I've had 2 heart operations. I have a autoimmune disease, again, that thanks to modern medicine means I suffer far less than if I would 20 years ago. So yeah, I've had plenty of moments in life that kind of help me reconnect with the value of every second, minute, and hour of every day that we have, that we're gifted.
It is a gift. I think that's a magic word, right? And life is so many ways it's a gift. Tell me about that, your experience as in aviation, flying planes and a foot at whatever speed you were going at is just crazy to me. I'm just trying to imagine what that must be like at 10,000 feet or wherever you were up there. Tell me about your experience. And I think you had some combat sorties too during your experience as well.
I missed out on my combat tour because when I was serving in the UK, my squadron was based in Saudi and it was quite sensitive. So they banned anyone that wasn't British or American. I ticked my combat box actually as a civilian because when I was diagnosed with my autoimmune disease, I was kicked out. I had to reinvent myself completely. I went from a 5-year-old that dreamed of being a fighter pilot, a kid that suffers chronic ADHD, managed to sneak my way through high school by doing 12th grade twice, managed to just scrape into the Air Force, but just through drive, commitment, and just passion to become a fighter pilot, managed to navigate the training system until I became a fighter pilot. When I was diagnosed with my autoimmune disease, which is, it's the male version of Crohn's disease. So instead of attacking your gut, it attacks your bones. It fuses like the soft tissue between your bones. And flying at 7.5 G in a Hornet was not compatible. It just made it far worse. So I dealt with a lot of pain in my 10 years because it was undiagnosed. I had to move into business, and there were 2 things that itches I needed to scratch when I was diagnosed with this autoimmune disease. One was wanting to be successful in business, and the second was to do something combat orientated because I didn't really get to test myself as a fighter pilot. So I moved to Afghanistan with my best friend, Tom, and we started a security company that hired Nepalese British Army Gurkhas to provide security on all the reconstruction programs. But the business sort of morphed into humanitarian work and became the biggest humanitarian project company in the world today. It's CTG Global. And through that journey, for me, it was a case of having to reorientate your identity, because my identity was all tied up as a fighter pilot. And it's a great identity because it's a wonderful community. It's a very fulfilling job. It's very selfless, but it's also personally fulfilling. So it's not often you get to fly a job where you're in service to the nation, and it's genuine in that you want to protect your nation and protect the values and be the guardian of Australia. But it's also personally fulfilling because it's a fun job. It's a hard job, but it's fun. So I had to try and figure out, how am I going to keep all of that in business? So to be in service was to do humanitarian projects and reconstruction. To be a business founder meant that I was doing something for myself that was high pressure, at moments high stress, but kept me in that kind of optimum human performance bracket of on the peak stress curve. And then it's been a 21-year journey. And then 3 years ago, I bought the company that effectively is me. It's Afterburner, 30th anniversary this year. We take fighter pilot mental models and working models and implement them in business. We've done it with nearly 4,000 companies. And here I am now at the age of 51, where I've managed to live a life over the past 46 years where there hasn't been a day I haven't been connected to a greater purpose, which is very rare, but it's also something that anyone can do.
You said you went to Afghanistan with your best friend, Tom, and started doing humanitarian work. When was that?
2005, end of 2005, 2006. And it was a very successful company. It grew very rapidly. We had some simple values, which was value our people, don't be corrupt, and be a force for good in the world, which made decision-making super easy for us.
Is that a common thing, by the way? Boo, just don't be corrupt.
And sadly, when you're dealing with the UN and humanitarian community, it's a massive deal. I would go as far as to say we were probably the only company that wasn't corrupt in some way, or have a corrupt person in it. Because that part of our model was to build something that could demonstrate that we weren't corrupt. So I went back to my fighter pilot days and thought, well, we always operate with a lead and a wingman. We always operate as a pair. And when you've got two people, it's much harder to bust in and manipulate somebody. So whereas everyone else kind of worked as single people, we worked as two. And the other benefit you got from that is most companies had to hire 3 people, but we got the same amount of work 3 people did just with 2. So it was a double whammy. You were safe, protected, and you were also a lot more effective because, one of the core philosophies I have in life is we are inherently blind to who we are. We run on autopilot and internal narrative. And the great thing about a wingman is they see your blind spots and they help you navigate some of those shortcomings. So that in itself, uncovering your blind spots and opening them up to be challenged, is a massive force multiplier in life.
The other thing you said just a minute ago too is around it's possible to find purpose throughout your life. Like I think those weren't your exact words, but can you tell us a little bit more about what you mean by that?
Yeah, I think purpose gets confused. Like humans, we're generic, right? Like the world is a complex place. So we run on an autopilot that makes most of the decisions for us, and we process information at a very superficial level because we just don't create the time to be deep anymore. So when we use the word purpose, people get confused between purpose, purposeful, and a purpose. So I think the first thing you need to start with if you're a person that struggles with purpose is find a purpose. Like all activity should have a purpose. So if you're doing things in life and it doesn't achieve anything, that's not purpose. And it can be basic stuff like cleaning your house has a purpose because it creates an environment that is more comfortable. So for me, every time I have to do something I don't want to do, and I inherited this phrase from the Royal Australian Air Force. It's called the SLJ, which is the shitty little job. So every time I have to do an SLJ, I always connect it with the purpose of it. I don't really like exercise because I have an autoimmune condition, so it hurts. But I know that when I do it, it has a purpose, which is to keep me fit and healthy.
I think you're the only person I know who says house cleaning has a purpose.
Humanity is engineered to be busy for the sake of busy, not busy for a purpose. So that's a really easy life hack. It's just like the trigger is, I don't want to do something. The question is, what's the purpose of it? The answer is, okay, now I'll do it. And that's what fighter pilots do. We always connect achievement to action. Like we don't waste effort. So that's a purpose. Being full of purpose, purposeful, means that instead of looking at it at a task basis, that's kind of how you frame everything. You become a purposeful person. Our purpose is an action. Purposeful is all your actions have a purpose. And then when you talk about life purpose, that kind of happens as a default of the other two. Because if you are a purposeful person, eventually you discover what your purpose is. The best example I have of this is, I do a lot of keynote speaking. I work with a lot of major enterprises, and some of my clients are like Palmolive and Arm & Hammer, for example. And these guys, they make nappies and toilet paper and toothpaste and toothbrushes. So when you deal with these people, they're always like, oh, you're so lucky. You had a life purpose. You're a fighter pilot. We don't have any of that. I'm like, hang on a minute. Let's dial this back a bit. What would the world look like without nappies, without toilet paper, without toothpaste, and without toothbrushes? What would that look like? So what happens is people get so caught up in the busy, they forget that, there is a purpose. And what's really interesting is when you look at the people that truly succeed in those worlds, that's how they view the business. They view the business as I'm doing something really important for society, but often, and this is what my leadership practice is, it's like, but you forget to remind everyone that works for you that it's their purpose too. You connect with it organically, but they don't. And that's a powerful concept. I call that moment the people leadership moment, the moment where you connect people to purpose. That's purpose. You've got to look at it through the three lenses, because the way and why three lenses are important is we don't wake up in the morning and think of achievement. We wake up in the morning and think of what do I need to do next, right? So that's the first step to being purposeful is to catch that human trait. The great thing about being a fighter pilot is you wake up in the morning and you've got a purpose. You have a mission that you need to do that day. It's gifted to you. You don't even have to think about it. And I didn't join any of these dots, by the way, until about 3 years ago when I wrote this book that's coming out, Flawless Leadership, because the way fighter pilots think, the way we work, was developed organically to stop fighter pilots from dying, and not just in combat, just flying into the ground, the engines going out, whatever, all the stuff that happens in training. The US loses about 10 to 20 airplanes a year just in accidents. That's not just fighter jets, that's Army helicopters, Navy, Marines. The US Navy lost 3 airplanes in a month a few months ago. So you've got to have a system and a way of thinking that helps you navigate that sort of complex environment with really, really high consequences. So to do that, that's what the training program does. It reprograms your autopilot, because the human autopilot is designed to survive. The fighter pilot autopilot is designed to win 99% of the time. And we know it works because we helped the New York Giants win a Super Bowl in 2012. We helped the Denver Broncos win a Super Bowl in 2015. We helped Pfizer, Google, Microsoft, Nike, Air Jordan. We've helped some of the world's biggest brands go out and kick ass because they bought into the process. So of those 4,000 companies we've worked with, there's about 400 that actually have embedded our processes over the last 30 years. I bought the company because I wanted to come through another lens. I didn't want to just help big enterprise. I want to help people. If you can connect, and my philosophy is called flawless leadership, which means a few things. Flawless means you'll never be perfect, but you'll strive as close as you can and embrace excellence. It means when you walk out the door, set the most ambitious but realistic targets. Don't just set ambitious targets and don't set realistic. There's a relationship between the two, and navigating that gap between ambition and reality is, I have some tools for people to do that. I learned that as a fighter pilot and I applied it in business. So for me, being a flawless human means you're not perfect, but you go out the door trying to be as close as you can, and you accept as a human being that we fail and we make mistakes and stuff happens. And the goal is to use those not as losing experiences, but learning experiences. And that's where you see the compound growth of a human being. Someone who is ambitious but realistic and tries until they get there. And then as a leader, you've got that extra little bit of capacity to guide other people on that same journey.
Going back to what you said moments ago that I really want to explore here for a moment is around the wingman finds your blind spots. I just want to explore that in life as for people who are going through some sort of transformation or transition. Is that applicable? Is that same thinking applicable? And if so, how would that work?
Yeah, I mean, it's a core life philosophy. It doesn't matter what you're doing. The person that sees your blind spots the most is your partner. That's why you have arguments. That's why you have fights. All of that is your blind spot, all right? And most of us fight that. They don't give permission to that other person to call you out on your blind spots, right? So first of all, the first step is accepting that your ego is the dominant force in your life, and your ego doesn't like blind spots. So allow yourself to have them. Don't wallow in I'm a horrible person. That's not true. No, there's no horrible people. There's a few, the psychopaths and the like, but let's just talk about the general population. I think one of the biggest, where you really need a wingman in a life transition is, I guess let's call it two major life transitions. There's the one that you control and the one that's out of your control. So the out of your control is me or someone getting fired or a health issue, right? That's a forced transition. The other transition is, hey, I'm a partner at Accenture. I know everything about consulting. I'm going to start my own consulting practice. Let's talk about the unintentional. So the unintentional is almost easier to do because, like everything in life, if you're forced to do something, you do it. So when it comes to being forced to do something, there's a couple of things. One, you've got to get back to emotional regulation as soon as you possibly can. You've got to get out of the fight, flight, or freeze that comes with an unexpected event. The key to that is, one, there shouldn't really be any surprises in life. If you're fired from a company and it's a surprise, that's on you. You should see it coming, either in the performance of the business, your own personal performance. Like when you get washed out of pilot training, and it's 50% of the people that do, it's a horrible day for that person. But at the same time, they saw it coming because they incorporated the intentionality of understanding their performance every day, and they could see that they weren't meeting the benchmark, so it wasn't a surprise. And I call that being ahead of the jet. Like, you should always be ahead of circumstance. When I was kicked out of the Air Force, I was ahead of it because I knew I was in pain. Something wasn't right, and I started to feel like the decision to be kicked out was supported by the feeling that I can't keep doing this. So, and in a company, if you're not performing, then you kind of know that it's probably coming. And if you didn't take accountability for the performance, that's on you. Like, if you're not performing, it's not the company's job to help you perform. You've got to get super curious and find out why. So the forced transition, emotional regulation. So that means go see a psychologist. Have someone that knows how to help you manage your emotion and call you out on the negative autopilot soundtrack that runs in all of us, right? Don't do it yourself. 2, don't expect your partner to do it for you either. That's not their job. Yes, you're there through thick and thin, through richness or poor, but at the same time, your internal narrative is your job to manage. I call it the iPhone theory. So when you look at an iPhone, you have a user interface, it's kind of easy to use. But behind the scenes in an iPhone, it's very complex. It has an operating system. You're the same as a human, right? Apple owns the operating system. You get to use the interface. You own your operating system, and you've got to build simple user interfaces for the people around you. So you see a psychologist or a counselor, just someone that you can where your inner monologue comes out, and you can just be super honest. You can say, I feel like a loser because I was fired. And they'll say, well, you're not a loser. This stuff happens. It's just normal. I don't have any strengths. Well, what do you like doing? I like to do this. What have you done before where you felt really good? Cool. And then you start to build the future. And this is a wonderful opportunity, right? This is where, like your journey, AJ, you get to leave something that you weren't really, if you love it, you're not going to be forced out. So if you're not loving it, here's your opportunity. I think the most important thing is find a wingman who's your emotional regulator. Now, when you choose to leave, just be careful because you might be really good in an environment where you're supported, which is extremely different from being a business founder where you have nothing. And that catches a lot of people off guard. And it's also the reason 9 out of 10 businesses, new businesses fail. So if you're looking to make a transition, here's a really good rule of thumb. If you can support yourself in a new endeavor and do your day job at the same time, you have the capacity of a founder. So you should be my head of marketing. She is an executive at a marketing company, but at night she's a fractional CMO for me in another company because she wants to be a CMO. She wants to be a consultant and a fractional CMO as her life. So she's kind of halfway there, but she's working 7 days a week, which is what founders do. If you want to do something for yourself, there are no weekends. There is no work-life balance. That is but it still comes back to the same perspective. Forced out is the emotional low. The jump out is the emotional high because it's exciting and I can do this. And 6 months later, it becomes an emotional low.
Yep.
What you need as a wingman in the chosen transition is somebody that's calling out your big idea. It's someone who's choosing to leave, is someone that keeps you grounded. Being forced to leave is someone who elevates you. They're kind of two different things.
Yeah. And I think it's a really interesting concept. From my own personal experience, leaving the world of financial services and navigating my way into what I do now as a founder of More and a podcast host, I found it to be a very lonely journey. It's why I created More, to be more community-based. And, this is not a commercial for More by any stretch. But what I do find was certainly with people who are high achievers, driven by achievement and execution and so forth, that whether I'm going to look more at the forced transition. I think people take it on themselves to just muscle through it on their own, it being the transition into their next chapter. If they lost their job, okay, in this example, then they're going to go find a new job. But I think it's a very lonely, and I'm talking about people who are pivoting, maybe going back into your old industry, finding a comparable role that's similar to the one you just had, maybe less so. But if you're like, no, this is my moment to do something else, but I don't know how to get there, I think it's a really lonely place. And I should go back for that first example where you go back in the same industry. I still think you need somebody, and I think you're spot on to say whether it's a therapist, a coach, or somebody to help you emotionally regulate. I think it's really important and often overlooked. So I'm glad we're having this conversation, and you brought it up as the wingman finds your blind spots, because I can't encourage enough for people to find your wingman in this process. And the wingman could take, and you have some great advice about, well, probably not your spouse or partner, but somebody else who can help you to regulate your highs or your lows, whichever direction you're coming at your transformation/transition. And when we think about your perspective about purpose, I think is really interesting and inspired me even, because I think about doing the dishes at night after we've cooked dinner. I'm like, oh. But now, to say,
the purpose of that is to keep your wife happy. For me, that's why I do that. And it's fair, because and again, it's mundane stuff can be less mundane, because if you don't have a purpose for it, you lose the feel good for when you achieve. Like I call it the transition from a to-do list life to an achieve list life. Like if you wake up every day and set 3 things to achieve, you give yourself 3 opportunities to win. But if you just get up every day and just go through the motions, there's nothing to feel good about. Listeners, I hope you're catching on to there's some great wisdom being shared by Boo here, I think are really great. When we talk about autopilot, it's easy for us to get swept up or locked into autopilot. It's easy, it's comfortable, we know it, the proverbial bathwater is warm. How do we move through that? How do we break away from autopilot? We know we're yearning for something new. For the person who's out there who's thinking, God, I got this job. It's a good company. I'm fine. I get paid well. I know how to do my job. I know how to execute. I know how things get done in this company/space. I want more. I want to do something else. How do we break through? How do we advise them? The first thing is to understand that's what happened. You run on autopilot. Like that's just, and psychology has done a reasonable job of defining your autopilot. There's about 180 to 200 cognitive biases that simplify decision-making for you. Think of a bias as software code, right? So it gets programmed throughout your life, and a bias can only be something that you've experienced, right? And then there's a belief, and a belief is when the subconscious becomes conscious. So as a result of your biases, if you were brought up in a family that doesn't eat well and is overweight, you believe that that's being overweight is normal, okay? Even though you feel that it's not. The autopilot's very hard to override. So you'll sit there and go, I should be healthier, but I don't believe I can, because my belief system says, well, I'm like my mum and dad and I'm like my grandparents. So understand that to reprogram an autopilot requires intention. So that's the first step. So if you want to reprogram, you need intention. So intention by itself is the story that you tell yourself. And as they say, the road to hell is paved with good intentions, which is really saying good intentions is not enough. It doesn't matter whether you intend well. You have to behave well as well. I call it the 3 Bs: biases, beliefs, and behaviors. Because biases are the autopilot, beliefs are how you think about the world, and behavior is how you act as a result of those beliefs. Just understanding that as a concept helps you understand that I can do something about this. It's called the IRCA loop, IRCA: intention, reality, curiosity, and action. That's how you grow. That's how you get out of a rut. So your intention, I want to run a marathon, that needs to become destination driven, right? The way that human beings process goals in our autopilot, there's this little program that basically says when you set a goal, you get a hit of dopamine, which makes you feel like you've actually achieved it already. So goal setting in itself is a program that makes us feel good, but most of the time we don't hit the goal, right? If you look at the statistics around a New Year's resolution, like 8% of people stick with a New Year's resolution. Everyone else gives up. Right, 3/4 by the end of January. So that shows you there, just in a simple study, that intention's not enough. When we fly on an airliner, the captain doesn't say, "Welcome aboard, ladies and gentlemen. Our goal is to get to Boston today." Right? If a captain said that, everyone would get off the airplane, right? You'd be like, "Whoa!" So goals are funny. Goals internally feel like achievement, and externally feel like failure, which is ironic, right? One word can have 2 completely different meanings. So the captain says destination. So when human beings hear that word destination, they understand that I'm going to get there. It's virtually a guarantee. And that's a cool thing about a fighter pilot. We call destinations targets. So we know in space and time and the effect that we're going to have on it. So it's clear, measurable, and achievable. The fact is, if I want to get to Boston right now, my reality is I'm in Salt Lake City. Right? I'm not there yet. So there's a whole bunch of stuff that has to happen. The bunch of stuff between reality, intention, if it's routine, it needs to be a habit. If it's simple and basic, you just got to do the same thing all the time. Use that word habit. What you're really saying is behavior, because the habits that you have are your routine behaviors. Between the destination and reality is curiosity. And I'll tell you this, when you hop on an airliner, the captain and the co-pilot don't just arrive 1 minute before the flight and then off we go and we'll figure it out as we go. That doesn't happen. They're curious about the weather. They're curious about the destination. They're curious about the gate. They're curious about the time. They're curious as to the health of the airplane before we start. They do their work around. And they're curious about all the systems working, so they run through all their checklists, right? And every single airplane has the same checklist, because when you've got tens of thousands of pilots, you don't want every pilot doing it differently. It's too dangerous. And then once we've resolved the curiosity, we create the actions that answer the questions. So the actions are, I do my walk around, I start the airplane, I taxi out, I hit my cruise altitude, I manage my fuel, the hundreds of things a pilot does every single day. And then afterwards, we reflect on that and we say, did that go to plan? And this is the bit that is missing in humanity, because no one actually reflects. Everyone just keeps going forward. If you reflected, you wouldn't have constant pain points in a relationship. If you reflected, you wouldn't make the same mistakes every single day. If you feel like the same thing is happening in your life over and over again, that is a red flag for you not reflecting on life. But importantly, the reflection has to be in the context of the destination. The reflection has to be in the context of the purposeful thing. It can't just be generic reflection. Like, that doesn't achieve anything. A few things happen. First of all, you go from a life of everything everywhere all the time to a life of being purposeful, because my actions are now going to arrive at a destination. So now I'm purposeful. You embrace curiosity, which means you're problem solving and you're having a two-way conversation with the world. You're not just consuming, you're consuming and engaging. And these critical thinking skills are gradually being eroded as the generation, the most recent generation that passed, that graduated from high school, is the first generation that was less intelligent than the generation before. Every generation has been smarter than the previous. And that's got nothing to do with math or geography. It has to do with the loss of problem solving and critical thinking skills. So a lot of words, let's make it simple. Intentions become destinations. We're honest about where our reality, the reality is the real world. The intention is the new world. The curiosity is about the gap between the two. So we start at the future, we come to today, we reflect on yesterday through curiosity, and the action is the actions drive us forward. So it's a really neat, simple 4-step process to take ambition into reality, into reflection, into action.
Brilliant. I love that. That is just some great, great wisdom and a wonderful framework for folks. Speaking of just helping people, Boo, this conversation has been amazing. I've been taking notes here furiously on the side as you've been talking. Some really good nuggets. But if you could leave something for someone who's contemplating transition, and so this might be a chosen transition versus forced, or maybe they're in the middle of a forced transition, that event for them, call it a code 3, if you will, was in the rearview mirror and they're trying to put it together to build their next chapter. What would be a tip, an idea that they could implement or research or put into practice today? Anything we've already covered or something new?
First, the world is messy and it hurts, and that's okay. The second is the solution to that is intention that then becomes defined as a destination. And throughout this whole journey of growth, understand that if you have a wingman, and a wingman doesn't have to be someone that you pay. It doesn't have to be a psychologist. It can be a community. It can be the Chamber of Commerce. Like, you'll find people that have the same problems as you do and invite them in. Don't try and be the best version of yourself with a wingman. Just be you. Just be the authentic version of you. And just ask them, this is what I'm trying to do. This is what I'm doing. What do you think? I guess that's it. And then just invite a bit of challenge into your perspectives, into life, into your actions. Purposely give that person permission to challenge you. Don't pump up your tires. You'll pump up your tires by being successful. Like, I haven't needed external validation at any point in my life because I get the things done that I commit to and that I want to get done. I've been a fighter pilot. I've created financial independence. I've founded 2 companies. I've run 4. I can just get stuff done. Because I get it done. and it's not because of me. It's not because of how I was born. It's not because of my DNA. It's because I was taught how to think and work as a fighter pilot. And that intention into reflection is what fighter pilots are.
I think that's great. Christian Boucousis, thank you so much for coming on Code 3 today. If people want to learn more about Afterburner, you're CEO of Afterburners, and they want to learn about you or bringing you into their organization and so forth, how do they do that?
My website's callmeboo.com, or just type my last name into Google. It's Boucousis, and I'm the only one out there. So pretty easy to find.
We will have these links in the show notes and the episode details for sure. So Boo, I can't thank you enough. I mean, this was just been a really fantastic conversation. I've gotten a ton out of this. And I don't mean to be flippant by going back to this, like doing dishes, cleaning the house has purpose, as mundane and as trivial and as annoying as those activities can be. It's a mindset shift, which I think has been brilliant. I've loved your comment around forced transition versus chosen transition, your elements of purpose and purposeful activities and being a purposeful person, I think were fantastic. And your comments, your 4th step, if you will, the acronym IRCA, right? And around breaking through autopilot, which I think is super powerful. So those were some high marks for me, but thank you so much for sharing your wisdom. Listeners, if this conversation resonates with you, I invite you to explore our website, bemorealigned.com, home of more. And it's a destination for accomplished professionals like you who've been successful, but know that something no longer fits. It feels a little bit off. I would love to hear from you. Any comments, ideas, potential guests for the show, you can reach me at hello@bemorealigned.com. And remember, life does not wait for the perfect moment. It waits for the moment you decide to stop settling. When your status quo feels like a resounding status no, it's time to listen and act. Again, I'm AJ Jones, host of Code 3 Life Reinvented. Until next time, stay honest, stay aligned, and don't wait for the wake-up call.